Let's turn this into this. Stay tuned as I go through the entire process of revamping our house. It's Tanner with Built Not Bought, and thanks for tuning in. Let's get right to work. We recently had a fire in our home, and all of our surfaces got covered in smoke and soot, so we were required to repaint everything. I decided to change it up a little bit and turn our lime wash wall into something a little bit more high end. The first thing that I did off camera was install this new baseboard that had a little bit nicer edge profile. I thought that this alone really made a huge difference versus the plain MDF I had prior. Next, I purchased this miter shear off of Amazon. There's several options, and these were great for cutting these smaller trim pieces. I tried cutting these on my miter saw initially, but was ending up getting a lot of tear out and cracking, and this shear worked much better. So here's our wall, and I have all my pieces. The long ones are 6 feet. The short ones at the top are going to be 12 inches. The bottom ones are 30 inches. And 4 feet is the horizontal span for every layer. These are extras, and I need some full-length pieces to go this way for something cool we're gonna add to the wall. So if I was good at math, I would be able to figure out the perfect spacing and what size to get all equal shapes on this size of a wall, but I'm not good at math, so we're just gonna wing it like usual. The first thing that I'm going to do, however, is find the middle of my wall, which was like 11 feet, almost 12 feet. And then I'm gonna take these horizontal pieces, and I marked that little pencil mark there, the middle of these. And I'm just gonna line up that mark with my mark on the baseboard and a laser and go up and put that right on the laser mark so everything gets centered at least on the wall. So the middle boxes that we create here will be perfectly centered on the wall. And then I'm gonna go with a 4.5 inch spacing between each box. And when we get to either the end or the door opening, whatever we have for a space there may be a slightly smaller box. I've seen some people do that, and I think it looks kind of cool that way. So we'll see what the math gives us, but there might be like a 2-foot piece here instead of the full 4 feet, just depending on where things go with those openings. If you're good at math, life must be really easy for you. Also, one last tip, I cut just these scrap pieces of 1/4 inch plywood. And these are cut at 4.5 inches, and that's my spacing that I want in between the boxes, either left or right or up and down. So my thoughts are I'll set one piece, get it perfectly level, and be able to set this down on top of that, and then place my next one, and these will just keep my spacing perfect. A couple other things I want to mention before I get started. I'm using this liquid nails Fuse It for all surfaces. Now keep in mind, if you ever change your mind and want to take these off, if you use a lot of this, it's likely going to rip off the paper or paint on your drywall. Even if you use a little bit, it might, so just be cognizant of that. I'm also using 1.25 brad nails. My goal is to use these shorter brad nails to just get it tacked into place, and then once I have it all up, I'll use my stud finder, and wherever I see a stud, I'm going to try to get at least one nail that's longer, like 1.75 or 2 inch brad nail through this and into a stud, at least one per piece, so that these don't go anywhere. I'm just going to do a couple dabs of this liquid nails. And the other thing that's nice about this stuff is that it will kind of hold it in place while you press it on there. So it'll be like having an extra set of hands. I'm just doing 3 little globs. I'm gonna go get a paper towel so I don't make a mess here, and then we'll stick this on. All right, so I've got my piece and I have my center marked on here. I've got my laser already on that center mark. So it's just a matter of lining this up with that mark. And I like how that's looking there. I'm going to put more brad in. Hold that into place. I'm going to just slide my piece down to this end and put it in the middle. I made a little bit of a mess here. Probably used way too much. Thankfully this is all getting repainted, but if you wipe this quick enough, your wife will never know you made a mess. After getting that first piece perfectly centered on the wall, I moved my laser and put it in the vertical orientation and started hanging up the slats on either side. On this very first one, you'll notice these little clamps at the top of it. It's because the wood split out on this one. I just nailed it too close to the edge. These clamps are just holding that glued back into place. A little tip is to put your nail at least 1 inch in from the edge. It'll prevent any cracking or blowout from that brad nail going through. I then pretty much just moved my way from one edge of the wall to the other, using my laser as a reference and then using those spacer blocks to keep everything nice and consistent. Another pro tip for this project, and I'm not joking with this, is go out and buy some baby wipes. I had some on hand and I ended up going through 2 full boxes of them, mostly because I'm just extremely clumsy and messy with stuff like this. But the baby wipes allow you to wipe that off of the wall, and they work much better than any other rag or paper towel that I tried prior to it. I also started applying the liquid nails to the entire piece of trim instead of just globbing it on in certain areas. I noticed in the spots that didn't have any glue, they were kind of pulling away from the wall ever so slightly, and the spots that did have the glue were almost like suction cupped to the wall, and I got a much better result when the entire piece was glued, and I was able to use less brad nails overall, which means less wood filling later on. Remember when I said I'm really clumsy and messy with things like this? I also made a huge mistake here, and I started hanging this centerpiece, which is going to be like a accent within the accent wall. I put it on in the wrong orientation, and like I told you a couple seconds ago, I glued the entire pieces. So this entire 24-foot section of glue had to be wiped off before I could put the trim piece on in the correct orientation. Just a minor setback in the game of life. At this point, I just want to say thank you to anybody that has clicked on this video and started watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. For every interaction, you push this video to a larger audience. I'm chasing after a dream here, and any click of the button is going to help me in that journey. Thanks again. You're definitely going to want to stay to the end and see how this accent turns out. It was a crazy idea that I had because I wanted our box trim wall to stand out from others. I always like to put my own twist on different ideas and trends, and I would love to hear what you think when you see it later on. A few things that I figured would be worth sharing is I use 4 tubes of the liquid nails throughout this process, 1 full box of the 1.25" brad nails. It's a larger box, I don't know the count, but it's not one of the smaller containers. Then I also use 4 tubes of white caulking to seal all the edges, cracks, and nail holes. This has been a lot of work so far, but I'm racing against the clock to try and get this done before my wife comes home because I want to surprise her with it. She doesn't really have any idea that I'm doing this, which is a huge gamble. Wouldn't really recommend it, but I trust that she's going to like this. This is where all of that caulking comes into handy. All of the trim that I just hung up and on our baseboards needs to get sealed up. Otherwise, you're going to see these ugly gaps and cracks. If you want a professional and high-end look, you need to do this step. It's not optional. And here's the hidden star of the show. Those baby wipes have been coming in handy constantly for cleaning up all of the silicone and caulking. They were great for that too. At this point, I was able to take a step back and really admire how things were coming along. In your head, you always envision things are going to turn out, and then in real life, sometimes they don't, but this so far is meeting expectations. If I could do anything over, I recently ordered and received a DeWalt pin nailer. I would use pin nails instead of brad nails because it would have saved me hours on filling those nail holes. Okay, I'm making pretty good progress on the wall, and there's a couple spots that I'm going to call weird areas that aren't very normal, and I'm not really sure the proper way to do them. If you know in the comments below if I screwed this up, go ahead and keep that to yourself because this is what it's going to be. Just kidding. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do in preparation for 2 options and maybe even 3, and then I'm going to show you up around the door kind of my plan. Issue number 1 is like light switches and outlets and things along this nature. What I've seen online is people just make a box around this. So I left these at 45s in case I decide to do that later. I don't have OCD or anything, but I hate the idea of breaking up these lines throughout the whole course of this. I just like the straight line look. I think leaving this at a 45 here gives it a little bit nicer of a finish, maybe intentional look than just squaring it off. But I don't know, what do you guys think? I left it like that because it'll be very easy to just trim this out in the future if I plan on it. Next is this doorway. At first, I was just gonna stop where I'm at, but then I was like, well, might as well just finish it over. So I'm gonna make these short ones, 2 more across the top, and then I'm just gonna do partial runs that go from here up to there, over, down. And I'm also going to order more and continue this through the door. Also, earlier in the video, you know how I said I'm just gonna completely wing this and whatever the spacing ends up being will account for that? I'm assuming you guys are going to think that I just was bullshitting and that this worked out perfect, but I kid you not, like I'm gonna go grab a tape measure, but the spacing at the end and at the doorway is so close that it's not noticeable, like a change in the gap. And I swear on my mother's life, I did not account, I did not do any special measuring. What I truthfully did, because I'm a tight ass, is I figured out what size to make these squares or rectangles will give me the maximum amount of squares with the least amount of trim. Like I'm trying to minimize my total waste. So 6 feet, and the cutoff of that was 2 feet, which I was able to use up there for those 2 pieces, 0 waste on that piece. And then 4 feet for these 2 chunks. I actually had to cut them less than 4 feet because you account for cutting out an angle in there and you lose some material. So it's like 4 feet 11 and 7/8, we'll say. Completely random. What are the odds? This kind of stuff never happens to me. I feel like I won the lottery, but check this out. So these are 4.5 inches. Okay? I'm gonna step back. Everything's 4.5 inches all the way over. And here's the wall. Now it might be a little bit different, but it's not like in your face it's obviously different. Let's go up and check it. This is the first time I'm actually measuring it, so I'm kind of curious too. We're at 5 inches, 5 1/16. So a 1/2 inch, I mean, come on guys. Are you kidding me? Now let's go over to this side. Should be the same, right? If math is mathin'. So we got this wall and this piece here. We're at 5 inches, 5 1/32 maybe. Seriously guys, if I tried to do that, I would have screwed it up. I guarantee you. Complete luck that it worked out. I still can't believe that. All right, I got to shut up and get back to work because I'm getting tired of this project. Like that motivation when you start a project is high and it's like really fun and let's, go, get this done. I'm tired of cutting these miters. I'm tired of climbing up and down my ladder, and I'm really tired of filling cracks and nail holes with caulk and silicone. So yeah, let's get to it.
With all of the box trim complete on this wall, it's time to switch gears and head back to the wood shop. So I wanted to use walnut on this wall because we have a walnut theme going on throughout our kitchen and living room. I took some walnut and ended up cutting strips that were about 3/4 of an inch wide by 1/4 inch thick. Since I did everything on my table saw, some of the edges were a little bit rough and there were some discrepancies in thickness throughout all of these slats that I made. I set this bed on my planer and ran everything through to get everything to a consistent thickness. After everything was thickness down, I went over to my router table and I put a slight roundover on 2 of the edges of each of these slats. I believe I cut out 385 slats for this wall, just to give you an idea of how much work went into this. I had to see how this was going to look, so I set up some of that extra box trim and then laid this out in my shop. And this is going to be amazing. With the help of my son Kai and my daughter Isla, they were constantly feeding more and more of these slats, filling the pocket of my sweatshirt and filling my hands, so I never ran out of them. We were able to get these all up on the wall in no time. I ended up using double-sided carpet tape on the top and bottom. You see those yellow strips there. And I was hoping that the tape itself would have been good enough, but I also had to come back and add pin nails to every single slat. And here's the final review. When I first started building this house, I made a promise to my wife that it would be the nicest budget build in the area. And I've always thought about that comment, and I've continued to strive to bring that dream and idea into reality. We're really pleased with this. I hope you guys love it as much as I do. Let me know in the comments below if you have any other questions. And thank you so much for sticking with me through this DIY project.
All right, everybody, that is a wrap on the box trim, walnut slat, wall, whatever you'd like to call it. This was a fun new challenge for me. I jokingly say we really did love that lime wash wall that we had prior. And I was messing around saying, I don't want to go through all that work again of repainting that on there. That was quite the workout. So I did 100 times the amount of work and decided to do this instead. But we really, really do love it. And I think it's exactly what that wall needed. Let me know in the comments what you think of it. My wife is in love with it. That is the most important thing. I wanted to really impress her with this one. And I just wanted to make our house look a little bit more high end, if you will. We had just kind of, when we first started, everything was just primed white. I didn't have baseboards anywhere. So it looked kind of cheap, which it was. It was DIY stuff. Very affordable, nothing high end or fancy. So I'm hoping that this kind of brings everything up a little bit. And so far we really love it. We kept the lime wash beside the fireplace here because we really did and still do love it. And it looks great with black. Compared to where we were, fire damage, smoke damage on everything, and couldn't live in here for over 2 months. We are just so happy to be back. And when we sit in our home, it just feels amazing. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. It means a ton to me. It allows me to keep pumping out videos like this, and it pushes these videos to more and more viewers, which is what I really, really need. So I would greatly appreciate if you did any of those three, and we'll see you on the next build.